logistic industries. I am thankful to Bimtech for making a preemptive action in this country to make logistics aware to the industry, to the people, to the media, and to the logistic companies. So this awareness will go long. In today's scenario, most of our coastal power plants, they are dependent on the coal from South Africa, Mozambique, Venezuela, and the East Coast. They are dependent on Indonesia. So with 125 million to 140 million ton of cargo per year, you can imagine what kind of business they inculcate in the country. The other major factor today, with two DFCC coming in the country from Delhi to West Coast, that is Bombay, and Delhi to Calcutta. These two corridors of dedicated freight corridors, they are going to bring a lot of business and synergies in the industry. What we are contemplating that the small scale industries, medium scale industries, those who are unable today to move material inland on an average worldwide is $8 to $10, but they are unable to bring down the cost less than $40 today. They will be running somewhere about $12 to $14. So that will make them much more viable as against of now. India traditionally has been treated that yes, it is a cheap labor country. We have the technology available, we have the technicians available, we have the resources available. I think all those resources will go waste unless we have the right logistics in place. You may be surprised to note that our rivers, they flow 5 times more water than River Rhine and Seine in Germany and in France, and still the waterways are not developed in the country. The Ganges River, Yamuna, Brahmaputra, Brahmani River, all these rivers are having potential to develop the inland, or you can say the waterways within the country. But the infrastructure is yet to be built, the dams to be built, the anicates to be built, the water lifts, water pumps are to be used, the lining of the rivers to be done, to be made. The whatever wastage today is taking place, that is to be stopped. We often say that the next war will be on water or on food. But I think if there cannot be any civil war if the water is managed properly. 90% of water on the west coast, when Bombay, Goa and the entire west coast is raining, 90% of water goes to the Arabian Sea, and more than 90% waters of Bay of Bengal that is absorbed by Bay of Bengal when it rains in Calcutta, in Bengal or in Odisha or down south. I mean, all these water management, water resources are to be put on track to make the country self-reliant in terms of logistic needs. The other logistics will be tomorrow, will be pipelines, because most of the minerals, what we are now trying to transport, that is through pipelines, like slurry pipelines. So we have already put up some slurry pipelines in this country. There are 5 pipelines which are working for iron ore from one place to another place. The longest line is 275 kilometers, which is in operation. And there are many more lines which are going to come in times to come. And these lines will transport at least 100 million ton of iron ore and also coal in future. I mean, these are the new avenues which are going to open the new markets for everybody. In a nutshell, the industry and logistic teams, they will have to work together to reduce cost, to reduce delivery times, and when we have the real, in true sense, the Kanban system, or in true sense, the just-in-time system, that means the logistic industry will play a very, very vital role. Up till now, the universities, the educational institutes, they were not very much focused on logistics. Was supply chain, logistics, they were treated or they were given a priority too. Whereas marketing, finance, they were always given priority 1. But I think the industry has to change. The management institutes, universities, they will have to rethink. Without logistics, we can't do anything. The other factor is today, per axle load on railway, that is coming about 70 ton. And the world is moving towards 100, 140, 150 tons. In India, in Indian Railway, we are still maintaining 58, 59 wagons of rail. That takes 4,500 tons maximum. That is the railway network today. But worldwide, a kilometer long rail is treated as a small railway line. That means the complete bogies should be about 110, 120. There should be 2 engines, and each railway rack must contain at least 10,000 tons of material. And this is how we can address lot many issues. Unfortunately, in the country, today still we are in the old era, which was given by Britishers at that time, that one truck or one horse is dedicated to one trailer. It's very unfortunate that truck and trailer numbers are same. Whereas worldwide, one horse, that means one truck, one engine, can carry even 5, 6 or 7 trailers. The trailer is not a limitation. But in this country, we register our trucks and trailers with one number, and the RTOs, the road authorities, they do not allow multiple trailer system. So I think the time has come to adopt all those facilities, to adopt all those basic requirements which are needed to give an impetus to the industry and to bring down the cost. Logistic means, it doesn't mean that the business is good and we are making a big profit. No. The biggest requirement today, the demand is, the task is that how to save time. And the time saved means the money is saved. Today from Delhi to Chennai, the truck takes about 9 days, 10 days, 12 days, and sometimes even 2 weeks. And unfortunately in the country, 5% trucks, they broke in the breakdown takes place on the highways, and that creates havoc. So there are 3% trucks which are under basically insurance claims in the country. If you see the total logistics in the country, what we move. So 3% of logistics that falls into insurance claims because of the breakdowns or because of the accidents. So I think the time has come for the surface transport people to look into the better ways, better venues. Thanks to our previous Prime Minister, Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who made the coordinate triangle, and he wanted to connect the entire nation through a very good road network, and finally a railway network also. I think the government will take up all these issues in the current 5 years plan. If you see the current 5 years plan, we have about 62 lakhs crore of business which is to be done in current 5 years plan. That is $1 trillion. And out of that, unfortunately, in 2 years' time, the 2 years are already passed, I think hardly 10 lakhs crore are spent. So the projects of worth about 45 to 50 lakhs crore, say about 0.8 to 0.9 or 0.75 trillion dollars, those are yet to be declared by the government. So we urge to government, to media, that all these projects must come on time so that the infrastructure can be given an impetus and a boost. The moment this $1 trillion is spent in this country, then there is a business, enough business for everybody, be it the industry, be it logistic people, the transport, shipping, and railway, and whatever is required, the material handling equipment sellers, the CHAs, and finally the shipping. The other major factor is today we have more than 3,000 kilometers of coastal lines, but not many deep sea ports having draft of 20 meters plus are available in our nation. So I think the time has come to dredge all these ports, to bring it to a level of about 20-25 meters of the water level. And once we have that much of draft, then we can transport even 400,000 tons of cargo, and which is the demand of the day today. Today, if we see except Gangavaram, a part of Vizag, part of Nhava Sheva, the other ports are still called as a meager or medium-sized ports, where the water level or the draft is ranging from 8 meters to 15 meters. So I think there is a lot to be done by us, there is a lot to be done by the government, there is a lot to be done by industry, and a good move by the institutes like Bimtech, a good move by universities, by the scholars, by the supply chain professors, scholars, those who are taking this forward. I think their contribution will not be forgotten by the industry. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you, sir, for sharing with us issues, challenges, as well as immense opportunities available for developing supply chain and logistics in emerging markets. May I request Professor Chari to present a memento to Mr. V.R. Sharma as token of our gratitude. May I request Mr. Sharma to take his seat in the audience? Thank you, sir. We are very fortunate to have with us eminent speakers in this conference to discuss the nuances of supply chain and logistics management. The plenary session will be chaired by Mr. Pavanesh Kohli, Chief Advisor, National Center for Cold Chain Development. Mr. Kohli assists the Government of India as Chief Advisor of the National Center for Cold Chain Development and serves on various councils and committees. He is a business strategist with special interest in cold chain management, having been lauded as Cold Chain Personality of the Year and for exemplary thought leadership by industry peers in India. He is founder of think tank Crosstree, which focuses on supply chain and logistics. We also have with us Mr. Sajal Mitra, Director Blueprint Consultancy, Mr. Shami Dua, Head Logistics Planning and Customer Service, and Mr. James Scott. Mr. Sajal Mitra, Director Blueprint Consultancy, as his career with the ONGC before joining the Indian Railways. In Central Railway, he was responsible for all freight, passenger and suburban train operations. As Director Railway Board, he was responsible for movement of all petroleum products transported by the Indian Railways. During his deputation with Container Corporation of India, he was instrumental in developing a number of inland container depots in the western region of Concord. He has been instrumental in development projects with Northeast Region, Asian Development Bank and FICCI. Currently, as director with Blueprint Consultancy firm, he advises companies on logistics as well as developing cold chain infrastructure for Blueprint. Joining us today is Mr. Shami Dua, Head Logistics, Planning and Customer Service, AkzoNobel India Limited. Mr. Shami Dua, a business thought leader in supply chain management, is engineer with post-graduation in supply chain management from NITI Mumbai. He is a dynamic supply chain operations specialist with approximately 15 years of international corporate consulting and diverse industry experience in customer service, distribution and logistics, supply chain planning, sourcing and third-party manufacturing. Currently, he is working with Decorative Paints business unit of AkzoNobel India Limited as Head Logistics, Planning and Customer Service. Joining this plenary session is Mr. Howard James Scott, Managing Director, Bear Logistics, Mr. James Scott has over 25 years of supply chain and logistics operations experience. As Managing Director, Bayer Logistics, he is devoted to delivering best-in-class end-to-end supply chain solutions. Prior to this appointment, Mr. Scott was the founder and Managing Director of his own supply chain consultancy practices focused on mainland Europe and Africa. He has worked with some of the biggest names in global retail and FMCG, including IKEA, Woolworths, Kingfisher, Merck, Lego, Mitsubishi. Before joining industry, Mr. James Scott served in the British Army. He is a graduate of the prestigious Royal Military Academy. Today we have with us Professor Anand Agrawal, Pro Vice Chancellor, GLA University, India. Professor Anand Mohan is an academician, education administrator, and a renowned corporate citizen. His working experience spreads across a span of almost 3 decades, wherein he has worked as ISM Dhanbad, AICTE as Director, Icsclm as Professor. He joined BIT Mesra as Dean and later moved on to BIT International Center, Muscat as Director and Dean. He has published extensively in reputed journals, has guided PhD scholars, and has written books. Professor Agrawal joined OMS West Oman as General Manager and recently joined GLA University as Pro Vice Chancellor and Director in October 2012. We welcome you, sir. Once again, a warm welcome to all of you to the plenary session on issues and challenges in supply chain in emerging markets. Now I request Session Chair Mr. Pavnesh Kohli to take over the session.
Thank you, Michelle. Good afternoon all. We heard Mr. Sharma talk about priority 1, priority 2. We have, for example, AkzoNobel here. We just heard the person in charge of supply chain is in charge of planning, in charge of customer service, so priorities are changing in industry as well. The topic is about emerging markets, and may I first just take a few minutes to put the context on the table. Emerging markets are largely misunderstood to be developing economies. The majority of emerging markets would be those economies which are developing, but emerging markets can also be product-based. When you had Apple coming up with a new kind of phone, all markets were emerging for that phone in particular. Emerging markets have bottlenecks which are not necessarily identified with the physical bottlenecks that developing economies have. In fact, if you correlate, they can all be put down across in the same language, different direction. Emerging markets mean what? It means the markets are ready. They're not yet developing. Markets are ready. And how do they get ready? Emerging market means there's an initial growth of demand and marketing parity. Market parity does not mean consumers' purchasing power or his understanding of the product. It can also be part of the source. Market parity includes both on consumption end and source end. This parity, this power, this empowerment feeds a certain amount of demand, a requirement. That demand trends off new consumption habits, right? Emerging markets, any type, has a little upswing towards requirement. That demand starts feeding new consumption. It's unknown. That demand suddenly outpaces development. Hence those bottlenecks. In developing economies, those become the physical infrastructure, the basic infrastructure that's available. That lack of basic development creates bottlenecks. Those bottlenecks starts raising costs. So suddenly you have this opportunity at an emerging market, and you have these bottlenecks which have created costs which were not preempted. These high costs starts restricting supply. Just like our roads, suddenly there's demand for cars and the roads are clogged up, they can't move anymore. They start restricting supply. But parity existed. So when supply is restricted, aspiration levels go yet higher. There's still a requirement, you can't supply it anymore. Aspirations are what allows for this enduring scope. An enduring scope is unending opportunity. Now, where does it all fail up? It's in defining and understanding that opportunity. That opportunity today, rightfully said, is all about supply chain now. Products and technologies are common. Unless there's something fantastic, innovative, new to the world, everything is similar. It's a little splash of paint here, a dash of new language on the other side, some colorful marketing, but the differentiator is supply chain. And supply chain means understanding this opportunity, which means forecasting the demand, correct sourcing, staging, logistical activities of hubbing, distribution, reverse logistics, monitoring all of it, and back to forecasting. Now, the most important part in all of this, and I'm coming here from this recent survey that happened about emerging markets, and they interviewed some 250 companies and CEOs and executives, chief executives there, where only 28% of them said they had fulfilled what they thought was opportunity in terms of revenue and income. Most important thing in emerging markets is to properly assess the cost to serve. And the supply chain is not just a chain of activities, not just a combination of it's supply chain and logistics management. I'd say logistics management is part of supply chain and it manages more than logistics. It's a chain of transactions that need to be understood and managed, chain of information, chain of operations, chain of processes, chain of people. It's a whole value chain. Chain of policies. Emerging markets have another thing, especially when they are in developing economies, policies will keep changing. The changing demographics do not just mean changing consumer habits. It means national priorities start changing. Suddenly you'll have a free trade agreement happening. Supply chain has to be up for it. You have sustainability needs. You have technology needs. Affiliations are required. Yet throughout the little that I attended in the morning, we were talking about integrated supply chains and we were talking about statistical data with the caveat that these aren't deterministic. But mind you, I mean, this is an industry panel here. Supply chain is all about determining what is on ground. Your KPIs are deterministic. Statistics can only tell you what happened in the past. It's a study of records of the past. When you start inferring it into what should happen in the future, please take into consideration the vast experience that the industry has, which lives in a more deterministic environment. So academia and industry should interact together more often to come up with the right solutions. Emerging markets mean a fragmentation of source and buyers, ill-defined territories, uneven, non-holistic basic infrastructure, changing priorities, I already said, and then all of it means impatience. So again, though I left the industry about a couple of years back, but I'm still talking on behalf of them, this sort of environment starts creating impatience in the industry. And impatience is all about thinking we've missed the bus, we've missed that opportunity. So you know, it's a vicious cycle and you jump into the fray without having understood it all, not assessing the cost of service. And when you are afraid of missing the bus, you start developing short-term strategies and they start taking precedence over long-term solutions. Now this is pointing at the industry. So I feel it's not just how data is analyzed and what sort of experience has gone into using the data. I also feel the industry, by and large, lacks strategic leadership. It lacks the vision and the tactics and the strategies that must prepare for this change. And all of this change, simply put, is confusion. In emerging markets, it's confusion because emerging markets are attracted to many competition pictures. And this confusion is a logistician's dream. Actually, all of us here are logisticians. Confusion is a logistician's dream. And I think I was supposed to have ended long back. We started off late. Let's hear from the leadership here. And I'll hand over to the industry leaders here for their opinions. And I think we are first on the table to speak is Sajal Mitra. Please. And Sajal, growing up there, let me tell you, he's one of the founding members of CONCOR, 1990s, early 90s. He's also the person who left Concor and government service, went into private industry, led one of the largest private rail networks here, and was one of the few who bothered to take on Concor in their own territory, both legally, financially and commercially.
Good afternoon, Mr. Sharma. Good afternoon, Mr. Sharma, Mr. Kohli, colleagues on the dais, ladies and gentlemen. After putting in about 26 to 28 years in the logistics sector, you want to telescope all your experiences in one and try and outpour yourself to the younger generation which is represented here. And so I'll try to do that as much as I can. And the total focus would start from supply chain management at a very lower level, go up to the railways paradox or requirement from the railways, as was mentioned by Mr. Sharma just a while ago, to that level. The topic that we have today is supply chain challenges in emerging economies. If you look at the topic, somehow it gives you the impression that challenges, the supply chain management system is already in place and you just need to take over some hurdles and then everything would be sorted out. But somehow in our setup, in the emerging economies in India, the cornerstones which translate into sophisticated supply chain management really do not exist. And it is this that we have been trying to fight all along and to bring about some kind of a solution. There is an issue about Mr. Kohli just mentioned about the definition of emerging economies. I thought my whole the presentation is based on a definition of emerging economies, and that very basis is being questioned. So I thought I'll revert to what I stand for: emerging economies. Let's look at the BRIC countries, Brazil, India, Brazil, Russia, India, China, the upcoming economies like Vietnam, etc., which today I'm not looking purely in terms of infrastructure. What I'm trying to say is the purchasing power, the capacity to evolve in terms of consumerism, and the fact that there is a maturing financial sector in place to take care of your demands on a regular basis, which means that the whole gamut of supply chain management right to the dot is in place in terms of an opportunity for the logistics sector. So having said that, I will just take you to the next aspect of it, that somehow we have this impression that we are really accelerating and it will be a very short while. In the next 50 years we will be very close to the developed countries in terms of their progress. But there is an issue here, and it needs to be established, and that's what I feel personally, that there is a huge gap and there is a huge catching up to do. And of course supply chain management also is a very part of it. There is no way that you can think that in the next 10 to 50 years you can overtake or reach at the level at which supply chain management exists in the developed world. It is a whole change, it's a whole attitudinal change that needs to be in place. I'll quickly go through this. We are all aware the logistics spend is about 14%. Containerization as an analysis or a reflection of what is supply chain management is just 25 to 30%. The volumes have increased in terms of business, but the percentage share of containerization, when I started containerization way back in 92-93, we were stuck at 30. We are still stuck at 25-30 just now. The volumes have increased, but the process has not undertaken a change. Intermodal as a concept of developed world where the railway system is in place, business has gone from road to rail, and they have 65% as business as freight which moves on rail. But somehow in India we have stuck and remained at 30-35. There are reasons for it, historical as well as existing, but we will not dwell too much on that. The retail sector is growing phenomenally. We all notice this in our day-to-day life. But the issue is the organized retail. Where do we stand on that? Just about 10 to 12%. Where do we go post that? I mean, how long will it take for us to establish ourselves as a sector which can handle supply chain in a more sophisticated manner? And as you can see from the figures, even the projections for 2018 give you, a 10 to 12% supply chain retail sector in the organized supply chain systems as just about 10 to 12%. In India, the main supply chain systems are handled by the unorganized sector. If you go to buy a fridge which is made in a sophisticated factory, and at the ultimate delivery you might have a cart which delivers in a place like Delhi. You will have a fridge tied up to the cart and it gets delivered into your doorstep. When you leave the shop, when you just ordered, you tell them it's going to rain, so ensure the plastics are in place and things like that. The fridge reaches, the air conditioners reach, but are we talking about supply chain the way it is? And for the last 15 years, 10 years, we have just seen that happen. So the main supply chain is handled by a number of players in the organized sector. The inappropriate taxation system, which focus on local taxes, in each state has its own format. UP has Form 3132, Gujarat has 400, Bihar has D9. I mean, these are all formats which you use when you are moving any product interstate. So that needs to be addressed. The GST is supposed to be coming through. For the last 5 years, we have really not seen, and we don't expect maybe in the next 1 year that this will come through too also. The fragmented nature of transportation. Prior to that, 3PL companies that we are expecting to see in this country. There's a very nominal number of players which we really can call 3PL. They are sourcing their transportation, they are sourcing their delivery systems from a number of players. So, in the transportation companies, high lead times, absence of long-term relationships, and high transportation costs. I know of steel majors who have 2 or 3 companies working for them in the trucking industry. And every 6 months the rating system is changed in terms of what will be the cost of transportation. So there is no relationship between the transporter or the logistics provider to the company or the steel sector or the cement who would be delivering the products. And the key thing in all this is there is a huge rural sector that is waiting to be penetrated. We have really not considered 85% or let us say 80% of the rural sector which we really not tried to penetrate. Partly mobile phones have done a little bit of it, but if you look at the fragmented supply chain in India for the urban sector, the rural is definitely much beyond comprehension. The fragmented segment of the transportation, just about 2% revenues earned by top 10 players. 98 of course are again fragmented players who are holding 6 to 7 trucks at an average. Maybe there would be 10 players who would be having over 100 trucks. The rest are basically holding 7 to 8. We worked out and we did a study. About 8 was the average. Not even 8, 6 to 8 was the average trucks holding of a company which was delivering product. The drivers in supply chain, the students would be aware. Inventory, cost of holding. For example, if you go through an experience of people especially who would be holding a shoe size 8, there are one of the oldest shoe shops in the country. You go and you will invariably, has been my experience, that the shoe that you want to buy, size number 8 would not be available for that. And they would say come back after 2 days. Size number 42 shirts would not be available. Paneer at the outlets, the Mother India, the outlets for milk would not be available. These are small experiences that you have which you have got used to it. The fact remains that when I go into a shop, if I want to buy a design of a shoe, I should get that size. That's it. I should not be asked to come back after a week. So that is the status of supply chain that exists today. Transportation we have already indicated. Facilities are required to be flexible, where you try and absorb the requirement of the consumer and then are able to provide him the facilities. Similarly, in the area of information. I'll skip that for now. It's basically it's a definition which is split into 4 of supply chain management that would be available anywhere. There is an experience. It's just not that I pulled this out of through various presentations, in the sense these 3 feedbacks that we've got, that it's the development has gone through a similar process, and compact computers, Boeing aircrafts, have shown, have indicated, have mentioned that they too went through a whole process wherein, a number of laptops weren't sold because they were not available. The Boeing aircraft had a problem because their raw material shortages were there and they could not supply. So, and so forth, and the success stories of Dell Computers, Walmart, who have done very well in their supply chain, who have been able to be more sophisticated in their approach and more systematic, more process-based. Issues in developed economies. Now, this is something which since the topic I would like to mention. The role of government, we are part of the government. I was with the government for 22 years before I switched over to the private sector. The role of the government has become very, very critical in developing economies. Somehow, it is coming slowly, but here we are always, behind the problem. Somehow we have not been able to go ahead of the problem. That is something which is extremely lacking, and until unless the government doesn't intervene in terms of infrastructure, etc., this really will not take place. We will not be able to see what there is. There are cases of the Delhi Metro coming through, the DMIC, which is projected to be finished by 2016-17, which I will be mentioning. But otherwise, by far and large, the role of government becomes critical. Policies in terms of laws, warehousing infrastructure should be given infrastructure status. Certain laws like the GST should be implemented forthwith so that there are no issues to be sorted out on the interstate and supply chain suffers. Your trucks are lying there for hours waiting at the check nakas. And most important, the ad hoc system of functioning. The chalta hai has to go. And we, if are not able to satisfy a customer when he comes to us, it's a very unfortunate, and we can't push the problem ahead. I'll quickly take you just a slide ahead. When we started the inland container depots or the dry ports in the hinterland, there was a massive opposition, and the benefits that flow from in an ICD were really not known. They were there all over Europe and the US and the developed countries. But in a country like India, we really didn't understand what an ICD would mean or a dry port would mean in the hinterland. So when we started it, there was so much of opposition. Why I need to mention this to you is that you will understand that the attitudinal change which is required is become so essential. The customs didn't want the business to go from Bombay because they knew that the volumes in traffic is dealt at Bombay. Their earnings are in Bombay. The custom house agents were a monopoly. They said there were 20 shippers waiting for them to decide. The shipping lines did not want their containers to go into the hinterland because they felt the turnaround should take place in Bombay. The freight forwarders were very, very smug because there were hundreds of shippers waiting for them to sort out their issues. So you can imagine in that context, when the Railways and Container Corporation decided to bring ICDs into the hinterland, the kind of opposition that was faced was immense, and we fought tooth and nail. Finally, it was the shipper, the manufacturer, the industry who kind of pushed the agenda, and now today we have ICDs all over mushrooming, and then some of them doing very well and giving real benefits to the industry. So the result was that let's go through. Let's go back. The result was that the whole NCR region, Ludhiana, I'm taking Ludhiana into this fold also, otherwise the NCR exists of Delhi, UP, Haryana, Punjab, and extended to Ludhiana. This whole sector boomeranged, businesses shot up, economies and it was basically a direct impact of supply chain management in terms of, a concept like port regionalization and terminal handling facilities that were available to your doorstep. Today, that has been taking a step forward. Now you have factory stuffing and destuffing. So, concepts like this really helped. But again, we have functional ICD like the one we have. You may lose your container there, not find it for the next 7-8 days. You would have an established ICD. Both exist in India. They are both there. Now you've got to take a call. What is going to be your next step? Coming to the rail, I'll quickly go through this slide. As you are aware, about 200 to 400 kilometers you can move by road. It's economical. Beyond that, it should be either waterways or the railways. Now that shift hasn't really taken place. If you look at the breakup of the railway-wise commodity loading for last year, not 2013, but 11-12. These are the major commodities loaded by railways. Coal, which you know is a 47%, and if Mr. Sharma brings in his slurry pipelines, railways will lose a major portion of their earnings, and then we have the split up. Now, if you look at containerization, just short of the last, it's just about 5.0 metric tons, which is less than about a percentage of all the business that the railways is doing. Now, this area or this percentage has remained for the last 20 years that I've been in the container business. The volumes have increased, but the percentage share has remained the same. So railways will have to think in terms of trying to get that business. They are thinking, but somehow we have a long way to go because the current capacity of the railways cannot even handle the existing business. And like it was mentioned, we require 14 lakh crores of investment into the railway industry to make it what we expect as a model railway system. So that kind of funding is definitely not available unless, of course, we are able to attract the private sector into the. So we have the dedicated freight corridor, the industrial corridor, which is supposed to bring about some kind of a major change. It will, and we hope that this corridor is in place at the earliest. You know, their definition, if you look at the company's mission, it's to build a rail corridor with appropriate technology that enables Indian Railways to regain and enhance its market share of freight transport by creating additional capacity, etc. So what it will do is, if it enhances the speed of goods, Railways has introduced parcel trains, but that has really not touched anything in terms of the kind of supply chain management business that exists. This is the DFC, the western and the eastern is in green. The blue is the one which is going to take care in future of north, south, east, west. It's not that the railways is really not looking at it, but the kind of investments after World Bank and JICA for western and eastern have come in. We don't see or foresee, we hope that funding would come in a major way to the railways. So coming back to the supply chain, we require a distribution network configuration in place. Now this is, they sound sophisticated, but exactly this is the kind of terms and implications that we have for the industry. Inventory control is so critical for supply chain management, whether it is taking coal. If I just give you an example, coal in Indian Railways, each powerhouse used to have 3 months of coal. Today, the industry doesn't want more than 20 days. That's the kind of inventory we have to, in railways, now have to ensure that in the next 20 days, coal reaches the powerhouse, which is a sensitive issue. Supply contract relationship, distribution strategies, and outsourcing, what should be outsourced, what not to be outsourced. All these are terms which are very critical for the next generation, which is going to supply chain management. And what are the prerequisites? The key thing is top management understanding and commitment. Are you committed to a supply chain management system to be in place? Commitment means you may want to do it, but have you got the wherewithal? Are you trying to source all your resources to ensure that this takes place? The quest for excellence, somehow the chalta hai, what we have here today, the ad hocism needs to go. Unless you don't strive for excellence, you will not be anywhere near. The cross-functional teams relationship instead of exchange, it's just not my cargo going to you. Unless there is a relationship will prolong the whole, and there is a value added to the whole relationship that has to be done from the transporter's point of view, or the supply chain management, or the 3PL company's point of view. So therefore, terms like CPFR, ERP, customer relations, radio frequency, barcoding, GPS, all become very, very relevant. They have shown. Otherwise, I remember in the railways, we had to look for containers, and we lost containers for days on end. And once they were piled on top of each other, there was no way to locate unless the crane person who used to handle the crane could locate the container. So that was the kind of experience we've had, and we hope that this whole process will change. And then coming to my final understanding of the subject, there has to be a complete overhaul of the attitude and approach to logistics and movement towards process-driven approach. I remember we did a course we had gone to Rotterdam port, and we were sitting with a gentleman who had been in India earlier. So I asked him what is the difference between Indian and European style of management. So he told us, we have a process A, B, C, D, A, and that's how we move. But for some reason there is a problem at B, so we skip to C. Now what happens in Europe, we come back to B, in due course of time. But in India, we bypass B totally because we feel it was irrelevant, at all. Now that is what is something which needs to be addressed. The processes have to be in place, and we need to get back. Systematic support of the government. We have to have government support for the next 30 to 40 years. Otherwise, I know I've worked in the ministry, I've worked with the railways, and I understand that if that support doesn't come through in right policies, we're not going to reach anywhere. We have to define laws, as indicated. Create a systemic revolution in information sharing. Ironically, we are supposed to be very good in software, but that has not been implemented the way it should be in the supply chain management industry. We don't know what there will be 3 different people taking your cargo from the factory to the state, from the state to the warehouse, from the warehouse to the final delivery point, and all the 3 or 4 would not know exactly what is happening between the 2. You will have to independently phone them to find out where your product is. So that kind of sophistication needs to come in. We have to be flexible because our country is really is totally, it's very, very magnified, and each state, each district is different from the other, and therefore we have to use flexibility to apply ourselves in supply chain management. And each of the developing economies have their own strengths. We have our railway systems are in place. That needs to take a jump start. Our waterways, our coastlines, all these need to be addressed. This is an issue. All these issues have been there last 10 years. All these issues, I hope, will not remain in the next 10. And with that, I would take your leave. Thank you.
I think we'll continue with the format of presentations. I presume all of you are taking notes on queries that you might have of each speaker. We'll do that later on. Mr. Sharma, please, if you would take the stage.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. And thanks to Bimtech for inviting me to be speaking here and interacting with you. And I must say this is my first instance and first presence in a conference where I'm addressing fellow practitioners, faculty and students, all of them together. So it's a very interesting aspect for me that way. I'll try to maintain a balance as to be able to satisfy the needs for the 3 segments. Coming back to the main the topic that we are addressing is on emerging markets and the challenges that we are facing on supply chain and logistics front. I represent Icsclm Dulux Paints, and we are the leading company globally on coatings segment. I look after logistics and customer service and planning. Right, emerging markets. Once you look at it globally, we saw the line on the graph, the global map in the morning today. So everything that is underneath the line are the emerging markets, very well portrayed. That was very good for me to observe as well. I learned there. When you go further, one is thinking globally, and when you actually start looking at it locally, so what is emerging in India? Of course, it has been a growing country. We have had growth right since early 90s. One thing that's interesting to note now in the changed scenario as of these days is the growth rate of the Tier B, Tier C and the rural markets versus the growth rates in the metros. A lot of our supply chain, product designs, channel or the go-to market structure has been defined to cater to the metros, which were always a larger market, in the most efficient way. Now that needs to change, because you want to be taking the best advantage of the growing market, and the growth is not in the metro, elsewhere. Of course, metro would give you your base, the large base for your factories, but the growth has to be captured. Now what happens here? As we heard earlier, the confusion aspect. Important, it's really exciting to be in the confusion environment and becoming a, suddenly the logistics guy comes out and becomes a hero in the wall like a scenario, and there's a confusion, he comes out with a solution somehow, and ultimately the sale happens. So it's interesting, challenging. Yes, but there has to be some method to the madness. You can't really be doing it every day. So what is going to be that method? So that's one aspect. Two is there is more money with the customers to spend. We know that. There is a change in regulatory norms. GST is coming in. There is definitely globalization and the trade that's opening up. There is the currency valuation which is changing. Lot more of our raw materials are bought internationally, especially for paints. We buy titanium dioxide internationally. So the price of some of the key raw materials is paid in dollars. Crude oil is coming in dollars. So a lot of your COGS, the cost of goods sold line, is in dollars, and it's the same price across the world. So it's not just competing, producing and catering to emerging markets, also ensuring that you're producing locally and being competitive in manufacturing as well. So with a lot of raw materials becoming the same cost, where do you really play? Because if you carefully look at the average selling price after converting the currency is much lower in India. One would say, look, labor cost is cheaper, land is cheaper, transportation is probably cheaper, so ASP should be lower. But it's not to the same proportion. The margins are thinner. There have to be a much smarter play for the logistics and supply chain person to be able to ensure that the sale in the tier B, tier C and the growing markets in the larger emerging India is done profitably, because ultimately you need to make money. It has to be a profitable sale, otherwise there is no point in doing that sale, right? That makes the job of the supply chain manager a lot more interesting, valuable, critical to the company. So that's a very big plus, and I would invite the students to take operations and supply chain with a lot more seriousness. It's not just the marketing and finance in good old days, which used to be the flavor. Operations and supply chain is the future. Is I would want to give that message to the students for sure. It's also interesting to note that the supply chain directors are a full-fledged running position in the boards of the companies. The function is that important in making that kind of a difference to the companies. Next important thing that to note for us in a challenging environment is the product life cycles. There used to be times, and if you look at software also, or a cinema software, the movie will get released in the metro and then the prints will be sent physically later to a rural town for release 2 weeks later. Doesn't happen that way anywhere now. In fact, the movie released in America is also released in India at the same time. So that's a kind of the shortening of the product life cycle that's happening. You talk of any technology items, mobiles, computers, they have even shorter shelf lives or life cycles. Now that's another challenge that the supply chain managers have to manage. It has implications on inventory. So how much inventory to keep without having the risk of obsolescence. With a lot of inventory lying, you would have to then pay a lot of discounts to get rid of it later. Not a good idea. Not a good thing to do at all. And who's going to be doing it best? The supply chain guy who would have a visibility end to end. How much raw materials are sourced, what's in WIP, what's in manufacturing, what's in transit. He knows it best. Next. While I have full control what's happening within my factory and within my warehouses, it is important to have the right capabilities in form of partnerships with the third parties about what's happening to my goods when they are outside my direct scope of control. So is it the transporter who's carrying it? Is it the warehousing service provider who's holding it? Is it the stockist who's keeping it? Where is my product? Till the product is consumed by the customer, it is still there. The money, the next sale is not happening till the last one is consumed. That's the supply chain scope, I would say. Though revenue is realized the moment you sell it to the stockist. Important, therefore, to know here is build capabilities and partnerships with your strategic partners long term, so that they are able to align with your strategic goals and work with you in the emerging market and the challenges there. challenge, of course, is around infrastructure. We do only 250 kilometers a day on a truck. Yes, there is golden quadrilateral happening. Yes, there are a lot of lanes, Delhi Jaipur, Delhi Agra, expressway. All that has happened. Roads have improved. At the same time, the number of toll nakas have improved. So my 250 kilometers is still there. Per day, I am still able to do 250 kilometers. The trucks are halting to pay all the toll nakas. There are no entry times to a lot of cities, and the roads, some of the trucks have to move through the cities there. So those are the challenges as well. So interesting challenges, interesting solutions, working with the partners to squeeze out the last money. So it's not just cutting out the inefficiencies in your own domain. You need to work with your suppliers, go to the raw material suppliers also, cut out the inefficiencies in his factory. I bought a WagonR in 2005. It was 4 lakh rupees Indian, and even today the WagonR is 4 lakh rupees. How has Maruti made it possible? I learned that Maruti has gone back and did value engineering projects to their supplier. If you say it 8 times, that's the tunnel of value engineering Maruti has done. So that's, to that extent, they have to take out the inefficiency in the process. 2 is the product design itself. Now, if the emerging market is not just metro and shifting towards rural, the tastes are different. A Cadbury chocolate, dairy milk in London has got a different recipe to what it has in India. The temperatures are different, it will melt otherwise. You can't really afford a cold chain in all the retail outlets in rural India. There is no electricity for the 24 hours. When there is no electricity, giving a VC cooler will make no sense. Next is, at what stage would you want to cooperate with competition in emerging market? Very important point. Would I not want to share the warehouse and the transporter with another paints company to drive economies of scale for that service provider to be able to reduce costs? Yes, I would want to. I'd rather compete at the retail counter. I'll compete in the product design and the product features. But as far as the shared services are, I don't mind co-locating with competition in the same warehousing facility if it makes warehousing cheaper for both of us. So that's another mantra that the supply chain managers would want to pursue. Another thing that's important here is the focus on talent. We do have a crunch in talent and trained people, and it's said often, and that's something that we need to invest in. There are ITIs, they would teach welding, they will teach repairing, they will teach other things which are important skills in manufacturing environment. There are the logistics and service environment is also important and big now. I would probably, once I know whom to contact in ITIs, to bring in this kind of a curriculum as well. I think CII is already doing some work around logistics training for the warehousing level people. But there are requirement and importance of the warehousing managers as well. The people, the students coming from esteemed colleges like Bimtech to join the logistics function, supply chain function in companies. Other important thing which is already happening is the role of IT in supply chain. I would not go deeper into it. There is already work happening on that. Another important aspect in the changed scenario is sustainability. We were not talking about sustainability 30 years ago. It is important today. So how much carbon dioxide you are emitting into the environment? Is your supply chain green? Is something that's important for the corporates themselves, and it's increasingly becoming important for the customer to know as well. Are you environmentally sustainable and socially sustainable? Important. And supply chain manager, because he is moving so many miles on all those trucks, is a very important contributor to the sustainability front. Yeah. Other thing which is important aspect, I'm just adding one more point here, is around reverse logistics. It was always and has been a lot of one-way movement. Reverse logistics is something that's going to be a very important aspect in logistics with all the retail chains and the big box retailers coming in. So that will be another area of growth or area of focus for logistics function in emerging markets like India. And I would close the last point. I would say I'll not take a lot of more time. Is on the importance of supply chain team to continue to align with the business strategy. supply chain cannot be working outside of business strategy. So their supply chain function continues or should continue to align with the ROCE, the return on capital invested. So what's the inventory that you need to keep, and there have to be careful choices that supply chain team would make in alignment with the business strategy, which markets to service, which product groups to service, which customer segments to service. You would not want to service the entire market and the entire product range. So those are the choices that business would make, and supply chain plays a very important role in those choices. Yeah. Thank you so much for your patient hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Dua. We have our next speaker, Abu James Scott. On board. And while he's walking up there, born into a sailor's family, a foot soldier in the British Army, Burkha, managed businesses and supply chains for IKEA and various companies in Europe and in India now. We'll hear from him. Thank you.
Hi everybody, it's nice to be here. My name's Howard. I live in Delhi. I used to live in Hyderabad. I like Hyderabad very much. Biryani is great. I have a lot of my friends there. I see Harry Lagam, one of my colleagues here from Hyderabad also, and Pawanesh and I used to work together as well. So a few of my friends around. I heard Mr. Sharma talking about some great opportunities in the future. I've heard people talking about inventory and stock control. Inventory needs velocity. Nobody really wants to keep inventory. Inventory costs are significantly higher in this country than any other country in the world, including China. A lot of that is to do with our tax system. A lot of that is to do with the way that our 27 state nations inside of India actually deal with their supply chain issues and try to get as much money out of businesses as they can. However, for my little presentation here, I've decided to come home, to actually have a look inside the country and see what we can do to work with and help some people who work extremely hard to feed the nation. My small company works entirely in the food chain, and we are heavily involved with the local farmers, and we are heavily involved with people like Nestle and all the people, the big companies from around the world and from inside India like Dabur, Amul, ITC, HUL, who feed us. But I'd just like to go back to the very start of the supply chain, to the farm. Okay? But some statistics and things for you to read first. Have a look at this. This is quite interesting. There are problems in China. There are problems all over the world in the supply chain. But the interesting part on this is the consumers have started to respond. The consumers have started to respond. They're fighting with the government. They're fighting with industry to actually have some waste reduction. The waste of food in this country is phenomenal. Okay, I'm sure you all read the newspaper, so I won't go through all the figures. But it's not just the food. Have a look at this. This is very interesting. It's also very scary. We don't class water as food, probably, but in actual fact, it's equally as important to us as actually eating something. And we waste a lot of it because we waste a lot of food. So the water that we use in the country to create the food that we should be eating, but goes to waste, is also causing us some problems. This 40% figure's been there. I've been in India now for 7 years. Before that I was 7 years in China, just so you understand I have a little experience in China also. That figure of 40% has not changed in the whole time that I've been in India. It's the same. Never changes, ever. So shouldn't we do something to help the people who make our food, the farmers in the fields and those people that work in the supply chain? And I think that we should. So we've decided, my little company, to go to the farmer to see if we need some help. And the problem with helping the farmer is between the farmer and the consumer is a whole different group of people called goondas. And they are stealing from you and me and everybody else in the country. But the person who gets hurt the most, unfortunately, is the guy who's done all the hard work to actually make our food, to grow our food. The government is very much aware of many of the things that's needed to actually make an improvement. But making that improvement is really tough. It's not easy. And if you are going to take on these people who are between the farmer and the consumer, okay, it's better that you live outside the country, okay, and do it virtually. Otherwise you'll end up with a few headaches and a few problems. Okay, but we are doing little bits. And my part of the supply chain, working with the farmers, is actually beginning to pay off a little bit for a few small groups of people around the country. The Agricultural Minister is very active, and he's quite keen to see pilots of different supply chain initiatives all around the country. But it cannot be driven from the centre. We have to try and engage the states as well. We are very happy to work with the government, central government or state governments, but more importantly for us, we're trying to get some of the local people involved to actually get them to make decisions and to behave in a business-like way. We are involved in all areas of food, from the seeds and the preservation of seeds through to the slaughtering and movement of meat, and everything in between, including the wonderful coffees which are now becoming available to everybody from the south of India, but also in the north of India, in the northeast of India, they're beginning to go great coffee now, as well as very good tea. So we're involved in quite a lot of different initiatives around the country. But what I want to talk to you about is our biggest loss. Our largest loss, sadly, is in the hard grains, whether it's dal, whether it's paddy, or whatever kind of hard grain that it is. We don't use grain silos. If you go out to the rural arena and you see what's happening, you'd actually be quite shocked. There's a lot of challenges out there, but how do we deal with challenges in India, especially local rural challenges? Okay? We have a fantastic Hindi way of dealing with it, with the Hindi word, it's called jugaad. And if it works, it becomes pakka jugaad. Okay, so we're, and everybody uses it. Okay, but it doesn't work. You heard earlier that in the rest of the world, maybe they have a process, A, B, C, D, and you follow that process. If they get to B, and there's something going wrong, they'll move on, but they'll always go back. We don't go back. Okay, that's the jugaad bit. We've already made our innovation, okay, and found a way around it, so we go and do something else. And we never go back and look. Now, for the most part, that innovative approach works. Okay, it's looked after the country for many, many years. And in the rural community, if they didn't work like that, there's a lot of things that would never get done. But now they need some help. The government is seriously concerned about food safety and feeding the nation. You will realize, of course, recently we've introduced FSSAI, and all the students should be understanding what that is by now. And all the stops en route along the food chain have been introduced to HACCP. And if you don't know what that is, all those students, you better find out if you want to move into the supply chain. And those things are actually quite new for us. It's very interesting, but it's copied from other places around the world. Why can't we copy other things? Okay, we don't have to make everything new. It's all been done before us. So let's take some good advice, use some technology, use some brains, and use some comprehensive solutions which are already proven. We don't have to make everything from scratch. So my little company, we went to the farmer. We said, look, we know you have a problem. This is one of the pieces of equipment that I produce. It carries 2 tons of grain. Now, our farms are different to the US farms, to the European farms, to the farms in Russia, to the farms in China even, in that they mostly produce 2 to 4 tons of produce. When that is grains, okay, the farmer generally keeps about 40% at his site for consumption, but he doesn't eat 40%. He only eats between 7 and 12%, the rest goes to waste. So why does he keep 40%? Why doesn't he have some support at the farm, at the start of the supply chain, to help him keep what he needs in better condition and sell more? Maybe we won't have so many deaths in the farming industry if we could actually do something to help them. Okay, so this piece of equipment was designed by a farmer in Haryana for me. And now we're using them. It carries 2 tons. It's mobile. It's easy to use. It's manufactured locally. Okay, there's one of the happy farmers. It can go with our Mahindra tractors, or any tractor that we're using. It can even go with a bullock cart if necessary. It's easy to move, and when it's full it can move, and when it's empty it's even faster around the place. We can use bagging systems from it. So the farmer can use this little working tool. This doesn't exist at the moment. We're just manufacturing, we're testing some. But it should have been done a long time ago, because if he keeps that 2 tons, instead of keeping 40% of his crop, he'll have more to sell, it will be kept in better condition, and he can take small loads out of it if he wishes to do so. He can move it on the road. In our very crowded small village roads are very, very tough. But we've gone a stage further, because the mandi is where some of those strange people hang out, and they're not necessarily helpful, but they also have to make a living. They also have to earn good money, they have to sell good things to the consumer, and they should pay good prices to the farmer. So if we can encourage them to use simple equipment and improve their area of the supply chain, we will actually get them fully involved in the supply chain. A little bit of training is needed, okay, and a little bit of engineering training is needed, so maybe we can create a few jobs for some other people. So we've made a flat pack IKEA style grain silo. 4 of them move on a 20-ton truck, and they can go anywhere in the country. You can dismantle them and move them somewhere else if you wish, but that's not recommended. But we have made them a little bit mobile, so that when they're empty, the farmer, if he's got a big truck, or if he needs some support from the local transporter who he can work with, when it's empty, he can move them and he can corral 2 or 3 of them, like a mandi. So if he takes a 20-ton, a 30-ton or a 50-ton, okay, and a group of farmers are together, they can keep control of their product. They can hold it in better conditions for a longer period and sell it at a better price. We've gone a little bit further, because a farmer was worried. A farmer's only producing 4 or 5 tons of product. He's going to stick it in a 30-ton container. Okay? Which bit of that product is his? That's his worry. So when we grade the grain, and we do our grading by water content. We grade the grain, we give him a receipt immediately. In this country, receipts for farm produce generally take 70 days when you go to the bank with it. 70 days of him having a receipt, his grain is gone, and he still can't get his money. We've made an arrangement with the Agricultural Ministry so that the farmer can get it in 72 hours. He can have access to 30% of his money, providing he's put it in our system and he has one of our certificates to say that it's stored properly and it's been graded, and it's a certain grade with a certain value. Okay, that's very helpful to him, especially in the wedding season, because he needs as much money as he can get to marry his daughters off as quickly as possible. So it's very important for him. Okay, and we, just so that you understand, we do slightly bigger things. This is a 250 ton grain silo, and we are putting 2 into the south of India, into Tamil Nadu. This is proven technology, it's nothing new, we haven't designed it, we just went to another company, we got some help and we asked them to come here and do it. They're doing extremely well, but fabricated in India, we created the jobs. We also move it quicker. It takes 17 hours to load a 16-ton vehicle with farm produce. The evacuation of farm produce once it's on the ground is really, really important. You have to move it quicker. Our system, this system, there's a vacuum, there's a hoover. Okay, it moves the same tonnage in 60 minutes, not 17 hours. We've got to move into these things. So this is the rural supply chain improving its technology, but clever people like the supply chain and logistics people in this room need to employ these things in order to bring the farmer to the consumer. That's just a little bit about what we're doing with one of the organisations. So I'll just leave you to read through these summary notes. I'll make a few points if it's necessary. Pawanesh talked much longer than he should have done. We are not concentrating enough on the food supply chain, and we're definitely 100% not concentrating on our farmers. So So the government of India and all the local governments in the states are doing quite a lot, but I think it's up to us to be innovative and to go to them with some bright ideas and some easy solutions manufactured in India and used in India. Okay, thanks very much.
Now we have Professor Agarwal, please.
Mr. Kohli and other members on the dais, distinguished delegates, students and other participants. It is always good to be the last speaker of the session because most of the things have already been spoken. A lot of energy has been already consumed. Let me first confess that I do not know how I was clubbed with this galaxy of speakers, because I have no experience in the industry. But as you know, that I belong to GLA University near Mathura, and in our university we have started since last about a year a small center for working in the area of supply chain management, and some of our colleagues are working in this area. My presentation will be mostly related to the problems that we are facing in India. Mr. Sharma was mentioning that we need to gear up for the challenges that we will be facing when we want to achieve our targets by 2020 and 2025. Let me tell you some of the things, because I know all of you know this, but I'll just give these figures. Our national highways are only 2% of the total roadways, and they carry 40% of the transport. Our average speed is just 21 kilometers per hour. Mr. Dua was telling that the roads have improved, but then checkpoints, toll nakas and other things have also come up. So practically the speed has remained same. So whatever other countries have advantage of moving at 50 kilometers per hour or so, we are not getting that. We are 46th in the global trade logistics performance according to the World Bank survey, and the 13th in GDP growth rate. We have got very complex tax structure. If someone of you have gone from here to Mathura, just after Palwal you will find a tax collection center of UP government, and you will find at least 500 trucks at any point of time standing there to pay their taxes and move forward. Things have been talked a lot about GST and others, but nothing is coming, and every year we see that a statement comes from the finance minister that GST has been deferred by 1 more year or 2 more years and so on. We want to achieve 9.5% growth rate, but the whole problem is how to do that in this type of environment. I'll give another figure, because Mr. James was talking about food grains and others. Just 3-4 days ago, a report came that we waste 13,300 crores of fruits and vegetables per year in India. Just related to that, the problem is, if you come to Mathura now,
the vegetables are selling at practically throwaway prices. Everything is about 1.5 kg in 10 rupees. Be it cauliflower, be it brinjals, potatoes may be 10 rupees a kg. So what that farmer is getting, because these are the rates in the market, so the farmer must be getting only 2-3 rupees a kg. So what will he gain? Say after all those hard labor and the things, the problem remains same, that he doesn't have any place to store, the government doesn't have any long-term policy. If you have been following newspapers, lot of agitation is going on in the sugar mills. The farmers are committing suicide. What we have not been able to do all these years is that we have not been able to come up with a clear policy for support prices, because too many things have been complicated because of politics. So I do not have any affiliation to any party, but that is the truth, that it happens. We do not have faith in third-party logistics, because we do not have such, again within quote, accredited logistic providers. We've heard just now that you buy a refrigerator and some rickshawala or someone will just carry it, and maybe by the time it reaches to your home 1 or 2 scratches are already there. So all these things we need to sit down and discuss. I am happy that Mr. Dua was telling that now people are recognizing these things and they are willing to recruit students with these type of background of logistics, supply chain and others. Because my experience of last 2.5 decades is that whenever a company comes to the campus interview, they just want 3 major specializations: marketing, finance, HR. So even if there are students with technical background or science background, they do not want to go into the operations and supply chain and other area. So they have said, sir, there will be no employer. But I am happy that industry is willing to give this type of support, because ultimately what is going to happen, that the competition will lead to cost cutting, and cost cutting will be most visible in the supply chain area, because our supply chain costs are around 13 to 14%, whereas it in US it is about 8 to 8.5%. So we still have a lot of cushion where we can make improvement. As he suggested, Mr. Dua was suggesting that why not have a same warehouse for 2 different paint companies. I was in Muscat for 7 years, and one of your Icsclm company was the group where I was working, Sadolin Paints. I know them very closely, and this name at least I had heard there first time. They will not talk to other paint companies, no, not at all. We have to be separate, we have to have everything separate. And naturally, if you are small in size, the cost will go up. But if you cooperate, collaborate, I'm not talking in terms of technology, or I'm not talking in terms of quality, but at least in terms of other sharing. We wanted to hold a program for painters, but then again the problem was numbers were small, so the faculty cost and other things was becoming more, and we could not hold it. So I am sure that the industry will be forthcoming in these areas, and I can assure you that many educational institutions are working in these areas, but the academia industry cooperation is lacking. We will be very happy to send our students to get some projects, solve the problems, give some academic input, And all these will certainly lead to making India more competitive in terms of supply chain. As I was mentioning about the food and vegetables, I read one article, as it was shown in the Chinese food wastage. I read one article about a year ago or something, that India wastes about 3,000 crores of rupees worth cooked food in marriages. We are spending things just to show off. We need to think on these areas. Some of the success stories, of course, there are in India. Dabbawalas have been invited by many management institutions. I remember once in Bimtech also, one of the representatives from Dabbawala was there. Once I was sitting with Dr. Chaturvedi and he was there. So, one more thing I will just tell, because in the morning I heard someone talking about Jebel Ali port. There is a very interesting thing that Jebel Ali, you know, is in Dubai, and Oman is coming up, or it has already come up with Sohar port, where Jindal Iron and Steel has set up a steel plant. And within these four walls, let me tell you that there is a big conflict going on between UAE and Oman, that why are you establishing a port at Sohar? Because there are a lot of business is going to be lost in Jebel Ali. Because the ships will come to Sohar port directly. Lot of logistics companies have started their offices there. I'm sure some of you might be working already there. So they wanted some kind of a conflict, unrest, because this was going to be a big economic blow to them. But then, let me tell you also that Oman government has established a world-class port at Sohar. It is the second biggest town in Oman. So we need to think in terms of our local needs, so that our people get benefited, our farmers get benefited. I was very happy. Some of the things, it's really very new to see, the storage facilities and others, because every year we read that the government food grain FCI godowns have rotten thousands and thousands of tons of grains. At least these will be saved. Government of India has launched a very ambitious plan of food security. I was reading an article a few weeks ago that if that has to be implemented, the greatest challenge will again be supply chain. Because how to take that much of food grain to the rural places. So I'm sure we will all be working together. I must thank Professor Lalwani, whom I first met in Muscat, and he was very kind enough to invite me for this session. Once again, I will tell you that if we can be of any help, the industry should give us some projects, smaller projects. I am not saying that give us big projects. We are not capable of handling that big things. We can copy from some of the success stories, but certainly we can have some smaller things where we will be able to collaborate, cooperate and contribute. Thank you very much.
Just about finishing on time, I think. I don't know if we have time for question answers, but what we heard by and large amongst all the speakers, a large focus on policy, so that becomes a bit worrisome. But remember, like I said, policies will change in emerging markets, needs will keep changing. And there's also a requirement about policies happening faster. They are first spoken of and then they're delayed, the GST in case and scenario at this moment. But what I would suggest is both academia as well as industry participate more with the government when it comes to policy making. Because situations are so dynamic and so quick to react, all policies need to be thought out very well. What the Indian government does now, more increasingly, they interact a lot more with the industry. Now, we don't want policies coming out which are driven and focused by only one particular sector or segment. Now, when we keep talking about GST, that's all of us in rooms like this with suits and ties who want GST to happen quicker and faster. But there's a huge population of truck owners who own small vehicles who will die if GST is rolled in right away tomorrow. So there's because they're designed around the GST model, the capacities and sizes. There was also talk about varying growth rates at rural and urban areas in a developing economy like India. Yes, also in any emerging market there would be those differentiations. But that's why logisticians, I think, rule, and more so. Supply chain expertise, it simply has to rule as we go along further. Collaboration and vendor development, again, very important things. Collaborate not only with your competitors, collaborate also to develop vendors who are what we call unorganized to function and work with you. There's a huge opportunity there. And lastly, I'd like to, on a personal note, say we must be very clear about our language and what we mean. It's not just mere semantics. It's about perpetuating ideas and theories which are themselves misunderstood at times. When we talk about the organized and the unorganized, don't tell me a 5-truck owner is not organized. He's very well organized. He probably runs it far better than somebody who owns 150 trucks. He's probably not sophisticated. He's probably not documented his processes. It's probably not replicable because it's all around just one person, but he's very, very organized. Maybe it's something that needs to be studied. If you look at our, you mentioned the Bombay Dabbawalas. Now, would you call them the unorganized sector? Would you call them highly organized? Now, they don't have it documented. They don't have people, there has been a lot of study on them, but they don't follow any. But what they do is what the organized sector would love to emulate. They monitor, they have traceability, they have accountability. Not only do they deliver in full on time, something I heard Harry say many times, he's one of my gurus, but also reverse logistics in full on time. Full traceability is all the way through. So, we must not perpetuate ideas and theories without having understood them. I say it again, reiterate, because I come across lots of research studies by people who have had no ground experience, who are saying the same language that has been said umpteen times before. It sort of tries to push the wrong agenda forward. If you have any questions, I would love to mention this, of course, about Gundas and Jugaad and what is Pokka Jugaad. I think that is part of the logistician's life, and to create it into a replicable process is the trick. That's where talent like yours comes through. Thank you. Questions, please, if anyone from any of the speakers.
My name is Ashish Trivedi from University of Art. I just want the panel to briefly comment on what are the implications if FDI is brought in India on the retail sector, particularly on its impact in agriculture, and what can we do to better address some of the controversial issues that that people are worried about.
Repeat this question for everyone. He says, what would be the impact of FDI coming into India, impact on agriculture, and what sort of controversial issues can be sorted out? Anyone here?
There will be some issues. There will always be some of those issues. A lot of that will come from policy. A lot of it will come from law. A lot of it will come from taxation. But in actual fact, my opinion is that we will have more benefits than problems. And the benefits will come primarily because those people who are involved in our agricultural arena will become businessmen. Okay, and what we should do then is we should work with organizations from around the world and learn how we can move them into the business arena quickly. And if FDI is opened up, we'll have a greater opportunity to do that. We are finding difficulties at the moment actually engaging the rural community in a business-like way. If you take Walmart, for instance, one of my clients, Walmart would very much like to have an organized purchasing and supply policy and a purchasing and supply business with local farmers. And not necessarily, when I say local, I'm talking across the states, but fairly close to their outlets. Now, this is very difficult. It's not difficult because of taxes and other things like that. We understand those. That's just a logistics initiative that the logistics people have to get around. But the problem is that the people who produce the food, for instance, they don't understand what it means. They're not fully aware of how their carrots and the carrots from somebody in UP or Haryana or another can all come together in one place in a business-like way and be distributed and sent to a single location. But it is changing. It's particularly changing in Haryana, actually. It's improved a lot over the past 6 or 7 months even. Just in the recent harvesting, there was a big change. But FDI will bring some great benefits to the rural arena and to the agricultural industry. And the problems that we have today of taxation, cross-border operations and logistics operations, we'll deal with them. That's our job, okay, until something like GST comes in. But my opinion is it will do us a lot of good. Is that okay?
That's interesting. Thank you.
I just wanted to add to that. Today there is a model of a middleman. If you go to the mandi, he will not allow product to come into the market, especially in the agri sector, if he doesn't want. So I think if the FDI comes in and you have a direct take into the outlets which are available to you, there would be an alternative available to the farmer, and then we will see who is the better supply chain manager and who gets the benefits from the produce. So the existing models may be good, but we need to replicate on systems which will directly benefit who produces and who finally receives.
I may add to that. FDI in multi-brand retail, and then you correlate it with agriculture, right? So you're talking about food retail, then not the rest. Rest of the advantages are obvious. Not much impact. There's only what we again said, the sophisticated, or what you all term as the organized retail in food, is only 1.5%. If FDI comes in and goes full force, it will go 2%, 3%, 4% of the total food trade. Not much impact on the farmer, or is his revenue scale. Impact on the model that is followed. In fact, I think the bigger impact would be on the person who comes in with FDI. He'll learn a few tricks of the trade here. On India, what we, in my opening remarks, I said, multiple source, multiple markets, multiple buyers. What FDI will do is consolidate something on the buying end and the consuming end, which will allow some of the farmers with whom they interact to possibly, there are all these caveats, move from peasant mode of farming to market-linked farming. On the whole, I don't think much impact.
Thank you very much. Good evening, sir. My question is small volume. Everybody is speaking of bigger volume, but I was earlier in forces. Then I was in one of the company doing bulk volume transportation. But now what I am saying is that the biggest problem what we are facing is when I came to the e-commerce portal. Then the small volume transportation, that is a big pain. And I was presenting a paper in IFT Delhi. Then I just told them that we can use the service of post office. At that time, many of them laughed at me. It is not. It can't be done. But now I do feel that post office can be a great enabler, and it can save the post office as well as post office can be also benefited, because many of them are losing the job, and they also can be benefited, and this can be a win-win situation for both, for the government as well as the e-commerce portal, because it is going to stay. Second, the policy which sir was telling, one of the problem what I am seeing is that the latest decision of RBI has told that the period which we go for the billing, for example, when we use the credit card, we give 3 months or 6 months free payment schedules, which was a great enabler. That is also one of the jugaad which India has established, or you can say COD also. But both of them are getting suffered because of the credit policies which has been recently implemented by our new government. Thank you.
Thank you. Your observations are interesting.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Swapnil. I am from JDS Software. My question is on sustainability, and probably I would like to ask Mr. Dua on that. What we are seeing nowadays is that companies generally, manufacturers generally, they outsource their logistic operations to 3PLs and 4PLs, and they claim that they have reduced their carbon footprint. So my question directly to you is that how is your company, probably if you can answer behalf of the industry as well, is partnering with say your logistic partner and help in reducing carbon footprint and probably help in the sustainability model. Thanks.
Thanks for the question. First is I can talk for my company. Yeah. Right. So we are. So we are definitely not saying that because it's outsourced, it's not carbon footprint caused by us. So we are definitely reporting and calculating the carbon footprint caused by the entire raw material cycle. And we also measure the raw material, the WIP which is produced for us. Even the supplier has got his own factory, so he is consuming electricity in his factory. That also is captured as a CO2 measure for our product, final delivered product. So to answer your first question, we are not passing it off. It is being recorded as caused by our product or caused by our operations. What do we do with our suppliers to help reduce this? First is you reduce your miles itself. Have your market and manufacturing footprint and planning in a way that your total ton kilometer is reduced. That's the first basic thing you could do. Second is you would work with your vendors to move to more efficient transportation by moving to bigger trucks. It's important to note that sustainability agenda largely helps people or companies reduce costs. It's not that you're spending a lot of money when you're dedicated or committed to a sustainability agenda. By moving from a 9-tonner to a 16-tonner to a 20-tonner truck, I'm actually reducing my rupees per kg delivered cost, while also reducing carbon footprint. For the local city deliveries, we are definitely helping and supporting our transporters, the small transporters, to move on to CNG vehicles where the city is making it available. So those are things that we are doing around transportation bit. There is work around windmill investments for our reduction in energy consumption in manufacturing. There is work that we do around product innovation so that the recipe itself is such that the consumption of power is lesser in the entire product delivery. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all. It has indeed been a delightful experience listening to different perspectives, viewpoints, experiences on this forum from the practitioners and academic experts. As a token of our gratitude, may I request Professor Chari to present a memento to our guests. Mr. Pavnesh Kohli. Mr. Sajal Mitra. Mr. Shami Dua. Mr. Howard Scott. And Professor Anand Agrawal.
All of them together. Thank you.
Thank you all for your time. It is my privilege to invite all of you for tea. Kindly join us again at 4:30 p.m. for a panel discussion on global supply chain and logistics scenario. Thank you.
Huh?